Can we talk about Van Morrison now?
Yes, let's move on to. So we're moving on from someone who clearly has no musical talent and has terrible lyrics and is really just a kind of contemporary anti-woke fool, onto two people actually who definitely have musical talent and musical, they're right up there, aren't they? They're in the history of popular music. Eric Clapton and Van Morrison, and a song called The Rebels. So, okay, you seem keen to talk about this, Michael. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, goodness. It was so... I don't know if you've seen it. Everyone in Northern Ireland who's on the internet would have seen it, basically. He was at this grim-looking... Oh, you did? He was at this grim-looking dinner or awards show or something, which seemed, for some reason, had as guests Van Morrison and Ian Paisley Jr. And at the end, Van Morrison is giving a speech. Again, I don't know why he's speaking or whatever. You don't see in the video. But then he starts going on this rant about Robin Swan, who is the devolved health minister in Northern Ireland. Has been responsible for carrying out like the lockdowns and so on. And because Robin Swan had said that Van Morrison's anti-lockdown remarks are dangerous. And so Van Morrison goes, "You're dangerous, Robin Swan," in that sort of strange mid-Atlantic Northern Irish Californian accent that he has. And he doesn't get the response that you can tell he thinks he's going to get. He obviously thinks people are going to go, "Yes, Van, you're speaking for us." So he doubles down. And he just repeats it and repeats it and repeats it until, and this shows that he is clearly still a gifted performer, because he almost gives himself the reaction that he was trying to get from the audience just by repeating it enough times. And then he gets Ian Paisley Jr., who is Ian Paisley, that everyone will have heard of, son, and currently an MP for the DUP, to come up. And even Ian Paisley Jr. looks a little bit awkward, and it takes a lot to make that man look awkward or feel squeamish. But he does, he's like, okay. And he tries to laugh it off, but it doesn't entirely work. And it seems like a few days later, he got wrapped around the knuckles by his colleagues in Stormont for having that.
Robin Swan is very dangerous. 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 Come on, Junior, you want to do it with me? Come on. Come on. Robin Swan is very dangerous. Robin Swan is extremely dangerous.
Anyway, Brian,
this... No. This stops when we say no. Right? That's when it stops. Thank you, Junior.
It's very sad, because I love Van Morrison's music, from, the stuff that he, like the Astral Weeks album, or the stuff that Van Morrison fans hate, like Brown Eyed Girl. I think it's all, that's...
Brown Eyed Girl is a great song.
I know, but if you talk to proper Van Morrison fans and you're like, yeah, my favorite song, I love that commercial stuff he did, that really hooky pop stuff. But it was nice to have somebody who was from Northern Ireland and internationally famous, but for something that was purely down to their talent, purely down to something which wasn't at all political, and it wasn't to do with the situation in Northern Ireland, and he's found a lovely way of ruining that for nothing and for no benefit. And now that anytime you say you like Van Morrison, you have to caveat it with, of course, I don't like the fact. But then I suppose it's not that surprising, because maybe Alex can vouch for this, but if you're from Northern Ireland and you bring up Van Morrison, everyone seems to have a third or fourth hand story of him being an asshole to someone they know or to them.
He's a famous... I think curmudgeon would be the really kind way of putting it, but he's a bastard. I'm going to disagree with Michael here. Many people love Brown Eyed Girl, even Van Morrison.
I like it too. I'm just saying that
he very famously often refuses to play it. And people think that he might be saving it for an encore, but no, he'll just fuck off.
Yeah.
He doesn't like playing it. He'll play everything else. And he's a real, famously very rude, very so maybe he's channeling a bit of that in this. But as Michael says, it seems to be for no. So whereas with Lawrence Fox, we know there's an angle there somehow. It helps him get booked on shows, etc. This move just makes his life harder, surely.
It must be sincere.
Yeah. So it must be sincerely held.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I suppose if you're used to playing live music, COVID will have hit you very badly. But
how badly is very badly when you're as rich as Van Morrison? That's what I find. So I just want to say, I'm a big fan. I love his music. I think, and it's one of those things. I do know better as a 30-year-old adult that there's a difference between someone's music and their personality. But I still find it hard, kind of. Do you know what I mean? Understanding that difference between. There's some really genuinely beautiful music in there, and there's a great run of albums from Astral Weeks through to, I don't know, Veed and Fleece. There's maybe 6 or 7 in there with a live album which is really good, and I like a hell of a lot of it. And even past that, there's some good stuff, but I think that's the peak stuff. And I've always known that there's these stories about him being a bit of a dickhead, to say the least. But it's so weird that, it shouldn't be so weird, Bob Marley wasn't a perfect person. John Lennon certainly wasn't. But it still does feel weird, doesn't it, to me? And this song really does just epitomize. It does seem to... Because his music has not necessarily been a release for that curmudgeonly awfulness, and this seems to actually have encapsulated a fair bit of it into one song.
Yeah. I think there is... if you're in the position that we are, where we're listening to music which has been released basically before we were born, a lot of it we're discovering classics, to then read this about the escapades of the people who made it at the time in old clippings of Rolling Stone magazine or whatever. That feels different than to see somebody it in some ways it feels incongruous to see Van Morrison, who I know is still around. He's only 75, but I've still, if you say Van Morrison, I suppose I still sort of picture the people on the album, or the person on the album cover of the stuff he made decades ago. But then see him now being reported out in a very modern way and in a modern sort of culture war or whatever, it just feels almost anachronistic. I hope that's not too. I think that's one of the reasons why it feels stranger.
Yeah.
It's when you hear that H.G. Wells lived until the late 30s.
Yes.
Was opining on stuff like that. Whenever you imagine him as a Victorian only,
Yes, exactly.
People are outside of there.
And I think that anachronism, that weird kind of attitude, or keeping people in this kind of time capsule, I think it's less the case for Eric Clapton, who has, I guess, more famously said some... was... His awful comment in the 70s were one of the things that kind of kicked off the Rock Against Racism movement. And Eric Clapton is... Because he's probably less of a curmudgeon, and maybe if we're going to be super generous, less introverted than Van Morrison, who seems a bit more private. Eric Clapton seems more contemporary because he's always been a pop star in a kind of more obvious way. And I don't feel that kind of... I guess it's because he's less involved with lyrics as well. We just think of him as a guitarist. So when he comes out with something awful, it kind of makes a bit more sense. I'm rambling a bit here. But anyway, so I just want to get to the song specifically because it's a collaboration between the two.
Yes, and if anyone was long waiting for a collaboration between, as you say, these two people who've, were revolutionary in their own ways with their music, well, I'm afraid you'll probably be disappointed.
Yes, yeah. So, it sounds like it could have been recorded in 1969 or 1970. It's got that kind of... It sounds a bit like Them. What's that Them song again? Gloria. It's got that kind of straightforward rock and roll, kind of almost garage rock soul feel to it, which ends up just feeling a little bit staid and depressing, to be quite frank. But it's the lyrics where the true beauty lies, I think.
Well, assuming, I hope I have listened to the right track here. I'm pretty sure I have, isn't the thing. But I think it sounds
it's called
like...
Where Are All the Rebels Gone? Where Have All the Rebels Gone? I said it was The Rebels before, but it's Where Have All
Right,
the
yeah. Well, do you agree with me that I remember when I started learning to play the guitar, I bought this little booklet, and in those days, kids, you got a CD as well that you could put in your hi-fi and you could play along to it, you know? And it would have different sort of genre styles that you could play along to. And I think this just sounds like the sort of backing music that you'd have on like the rock school CD, rhythm and blues sort of. It's that uninspired, you know, where you could just imagine if you were to take away the words, you could imagine somebody trying to learn how to improvise blues hooks on top of it. Yeah. But it just and I say it sadly, it's got that same sort of quality as some of the Rolling Stones' more recent music, where it just seems like generic rhythm and blues music without any of the sort of excitement or fun of the stuff that people actually listen to. Yes, people keep on keeping their record collections.
And the lyrics reflect that. They're clearly trying to kind of capture the magic of a previous era. So I'll go through some of the lyrics. Where have all the rebels gone? Hiding behind their computer screens. Where's the spirit? Where's the soul? Where have all the rebels gone? Why don't they come out of the woodwork now? And this is the bit which I think is just incredibly stupid in trying to capture the magic of a previous era. 1 for the money, 2 for the show. It's not very rock and roll. Where have all the rebels gone? You're like, if we just quote a classic Elvis hit, 1 for the money, 2 for the show, then we're kind of aping the magic of it and really bring it. That it has that vibe. And again, it's clearly not opportunistic in the way that Lawrence Fox is, and it feels a bit more straightforwardly genuine. But what are the thoughts behind those lyrics? It's just so cheap, and it perfectly matches the cheapness of the kind of the backing track. It's just
also, I think Elvis would have followed the lockdown rules to the letter. I think Elvis would have done his bit. There's a picture of Elvis. He was a soldier, and there's a picture of Elvis getting the polio vaccine when it came around, because he wanted to make sure that everyone got jabbed. Because you know, say what you will about Elvis, but I think he would have kept his distance. He would have worn a mask. It would have had rhinestones. It would have been a remarkable mask.
Yeah, doubtless, absolutely doubtless. But there was a video I saw recently as well of Eric Clapton, and he was quite funny because he sounded very kind of Lawrence Foxy, you know, is this kind of like wealthy, but they're from different backgrounds in a way. Lawrence Fox is kind of this inherited wealth of the family, and Eric Clapton was from a working class background, but he's now, you know, he's been incredibly wealthy probably since like 1967 or 8 or something, I would imagine. And he was saying, you know, I don't want to wear. I was doing a Beatles accent nearly there. I don't know how to do it.
I'm Eric Clapton.
I don't know how to do a Clapton accent. But he was whinging because like he didn't want to wear a mask and he was pushing against it, and his kids thought he was stupid, and he's like, it really made me feel lonely, and you know, you feel isolated from everyone else. And you're just like, what on earth are you talking about? Like, your kids just think you're being an idiot. I mean, you are being an idiot. What are you whinging about? And then he goes and does this song with Van Morrison, and is it just people, you know, like spitting out their dummy? Is this all it is? I find I kind of want to get to the bottom of it, but I'm not sure if there's a bottom to get to.
Sure. I mean, this is part of like quite a long album of Van Morrison's, isn't it? There's like, I think there's about 20 songs.
Oh, are there 20? Oh wow. Because
all
this one I saw released as like Slow Hand and Van. So yeah, let's. Sorry.
I think there is a sort of a, you know, Van Morrison's latest album of loads of songs, each as unmemorable as the last.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, 20.
There's one that's called like Why Are You on Facebook?
Amazing.
It's pretty fun
because
you know, I mean, it feels like it's targeted at my grandparents, except they'd hate it.
Targeted at as in for the benefit of your grandparents, or specifically, why are your grandparents on Facebook?
Both.
I did see. I've just seen one of the songs is called "Stop Bitching, Do Something," which does feel like very much, you know, get off my lawn kids these days kind of vibe. But I did hear some of the controversy around they own the media. They obviously
God, who's they?
That sounds very anti-Semitic, and I think
Yeah.
I think I'd heard someone say, not even in defense of him though, they're still saying he's an idiot, that when he says he means liberals. I'm not as optimistic as this person was. I didn't realize it was a 28 song album. It's 2 hours 8 minutes. Wholly unnecessary.
Exactly.
That's good.
I wonder if that was so that he could then say, well, I'm doing new shows of entirely new music, which is why he sort of pumped it all out relatively quickly, and why it's all so sort of samey. But that's a pure guess. But certainly it's strange. It's a far way away from. These are the lengths he is going to avoid having to play Brown Eyed Girl. Is my point. He hates it that much.
That's how lockdown should have been sold to him to begin with. It's like people will legally not be allowed to ask you to play Brown Eyed Girl at venues for a year. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that somewhat, possibly, arguably optimistic note is possibly a good place for us to finish. I mean, I don't know what to say about the material we've covered tonight. I do not.
Is it over? No, is it underrated? Overrated?
Well, yeah, this is the thing. It's a bit of a misnomer for my podcast here, but sometimes I've just got to cover material which is arguably less infamous than it deserves to be. So maybe I can pretend that kind of counts in its own way. Anyway, thanks guys for joining me, and
No, thanks for having us.
see you.
Yes, thanks. It was really fun.